This video is sponsored by Factor, the best food delivery service on the market, where the food is delivered fresh, never frozen, and they're dietitian approved meals by gourmet chefs that not only taste really good, but are also really good for you as well. Every day I have something different. Right now I'm having some tomato goat cheese cavatappi primavera, and that is a mouthful. Literally too. It's really good. And I haven't gone grocery shopping in months. I haven't eaten out in months. It's literally like a routine for me at this point, as the food is excellent all the way around. I'm getting in much better shape with working out and having this good diet. It's very easy to prepare. You can either put it in the microwave, you can put it in the oven. It's all pre-planned for you. You just have to warm it up and enjoy. A lot of people don't want to be sitting around and just wasting time going and getting food and preparing it and all that stuff. Factor has it all prepared for you already. Warm it up, and for the spring, you're going to be able to enjoy the weather as well. Much easier without any headaches of planning out your diet. And each week, Factor comes out with different variety of food lifestyles, from keto to calorie smart, vegan, veggie, protein plus. It depends what you really want here. And they're all completely different from each other. I mean, some amazing food that I'm trying all over the place, you know? As you guys see, I do show you guys different kinds of food. They're all completely different from each other, but all are really good, man. And Factor has a deal for all of us. Head to factor75.com or click the link in the description below and use the promo code theweasel50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. It's waiting for you, and I'm telling you, you do not want to miss out on this. We have some clarity on what's going to happen with the middleweight title now, and it's not going to be Alex Pereira next to fight Adesanya. At least the rematch is not going to be immediate, because Pereira just came out and said on his YouTube channel that he's going to go up to 205 pounds, just like some people were speculating. He seems to be too big for 185, and that could also mean that the weight cut is just a bit too much for him. I mean, he's enormous. We've seen him stand next to some 205ers, and he's even bigger than they are. So it makes a lot of sense for him to go up to 205, and it seems to be the thing that he's most comfortable with, and he sees a future in that division as well. Now, he did say that he can make 185 every single time, but it looks like he'll not be at his optimal, he'll not be at his best cutting that much weight. And that pretty much settles it for an immediate rematch. So Alex Pereira is going to be looking to become a 2-division champion. So he already did one thing. He got the middleweight title, and now he's going to redo history for himself. And for the second time, gonna be a 2-division champion. He did it once in kickboxing, in Glory Kickboxing, mind you, one of the top organizations, and now he's gonna be looking to do it in another sport at the top organization, the UFC. If he can do that, if he can become the light heavyweight and middleweight champion in kickboxing as well as in MMA, we have to go and say he's potentially like what, top 3, top 5 greatest combat sports athletes of all time. He already has the record against Adesanya. If we're gonna just look at his perspective, he's already 3-1 against him, 1-1 in MMA. So it looks like he's gonna chase something that Adesanya hasn't done yet. Adesanya attempted to become a double champion. He lost to Jan Blachowicz. Now imagine if Alex Pereira actually pulls it off. And I think he could pull it off better than Adesanya could, because he's much bigger. Adesanya ran into an issue with the size. It was very competitive on the feet with Jan Blachowicz. The striking was very even, but it looked like Adesanya was getting the better of him. But once Jan switched up the game plan and started to use his wrestling, and more specifically his size and strength against Adesanya, and Jan had to be like, what, 20 pounds heavier or something in the fight completely changed. And I don't think that's going to be the same thing with Alex Pereira, especially with the fact that now Jamahal Hill is the champion, who's a striker. He's a guy who defends takedowns. That's the extent of his wrestling, and he tries to knock you out with his hands. It's a much more doable thing for Alex Pereira, given the landscape at 205 right now. He just has to avoid the wrestlers, Magomed Ankalaev, potentially Aleksandar Rakic, even Jan Blachowicz. These guys can take him to the ground and do very bad things to him, and they're also around the same size. It's actually crazy to think about that. A guy who was the 185-pound champion is even potentially bigger than all the other 205ers. Or at least like the same size as them. That's crazy to think about. But yes, Alex Pereira, it seems like he's chasing history more than anything else. He's chasing history rather than getting revenge against Adesanya on that loss. But there was something interesting he was saying before I get into the odds of him beating the top contenders at 205. He did say that he's going to see how Adesanya responds. How is his behavior going to be when Pereira goes up to 205 and does his thing over there? It seemed like what he was saying was he wants to see if Adesanya comes up to 205 to fight him again. What that tells me is Pereira's not going to be able to make 185 comfortably. He's not going to be the same kind of guy. And potentially he wants that fight at 205 against Adesanya, where he's at his best and Adesanya probably not as good as he would be at 185. So that's what I think he was meaning by watching what Adesanya's behavior is going to be like. And it also does show that Pereira's mind is still a little bit on Adesanya. I think it has to be with the fact that he just came off a knockout loss, which is going to be understandable, but maybe in the future, like, give him a few months at least, or maybe even a year, he's not going to be thinking about Adesanya anymore. It's hard to get your mind off a knockout loss. That is true for everybody. I mean, Adesanya was thinking about the knockout loss to Pereira for years, and he's pretty much admitted to that, right? The revenge that he was talking about was so sweet for him. Pereira's mind is also going to stick on the fact that he got knocked out by Adesanya. But hopefully by the time he goes to 205 and gets his first opponent up there, it's not going to deter him. It's not going to cloud up his mind, you know? He really needs to be more on point than he was at 185 against those guys that are his size. Because there are guys there who can match his strength and also take him to the ground. The thing he had against the 185ers, if they tried to take him to the ground, was that he had the strength over them. So he at least had something against the wrestlers at 185. But what are his chances of becoming a two-division champion and establishing himself as an absolute legend in combat sports? He would have to beat Jamahal Hill, who has not only now, but even previously accepted the fight. Looking forward to it. He wants to beat that guy, and there is a bit of a storyline between those two, with that Jamahal Hill defeated Alex Perez's coach Glover Teixeira. This is yet another storyline that Alex Perez is a part of, which makes his move no matter where he goes so interesting, so fun to watch, because now we get to see the student try to avenge the master. So there is a bit of a revenge dynamic to this as well. Not only with the Adesanya thing, but now even with the Jamahal Hill thing. But for different reasons, of course. If he's able to defeat Jamahal Hill, that's insane. But he needs to fight before that happens. At least one. Because he is officially the #1 contender at 185. Which means his first fight at 205 is not going to be against a slouch. It's probably going to be someone in the top 5. And depending on how he wins, he might get a title shot or he might not. If he knocks the guy out in devastating fashion and does not make it look close, he's going to get an immediate title shot right after that. But if he doesn't, it's a back and forth fight. He might not get a title shot, especially if it's not against someone like Magomed Ankalaev or Jiri Prochazka, someone in the top 3. And also with the fact that Jiri is out and he's deserving of a title shot more than anybody else, it does throw a wrench into Pereira's plans potentially, but I think Pereira has like a 6-month suspension right now, so there is time for Jiri to get that title shot before Pereira does. So now thinking about it, it's not going to delay anything. Jiri's going to get the title shot before Pereira ever does. Let's say Pereira is successful at 205, then Pereira will get the title shot against the winner of potentially Jamahal Hill and Jiri Prochazka. But let's see in the top 5, what are his chances, because that's what it looks like his next opponent is going to be. Someone there. Anthony Smith, I think, is a little bit smaller when it comes to the actual weight between them two. Pereira never gets out of shape. He's a very heavy guy. He walks around at like 230 pounds, which is enormous. He could literally fight as a heavyweight. While it seems like Anthony Smith walks around like 225. So there's like 5 to 7 pounds of a difference here. But when it comes to the stand-up, Anthony Smith gets torched by Pereira, absolutely mauled out there. Smith has to get the fight to the ground. And Anthony Smith actually is a rather underrated offensive wrestler sometimes. It depends, because he did take down Devin Clark, who's a decent wrestler. He took down Glover Teixeira. He took down Thiago Santos. And some people had a hard time taking him to the ground, but the vast majority of his takedowns actually do not land. But with a guy like Alex Pereira, who keeps his hips so square to you, it is inviting a double leg. Even though Smith's double leg is not that great, he'd probably have more success in the trip. Pereira's fighting style will make those even easier for Anthony Smith. So if he gets it to the ground, I think he would submit Pereira. I think it would actually be very bad for him. Smith is a much better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist than he is a wrestler. He's a legitimate black belt on the ground. But if it stays on the feet, the Pereira could defend the takedowns, keep enough distance, and just keep the danger level high with the fact that he's looking for the big shot to knock Anthony Smith out at every given moment. I think it will keep Smith at bay a little bit. And Pereira also does have the reach advantage, so he will be able to keep the jab out there, the leg kicks out there. He has to avoid the double leg and the trips in the clinch. If he could do that, he should be able to win, but I do think the fight is rather 50-50, or I'll give Pereira actually a 60-40 against Smith. Aleksandar Rakic is potentially a better wrestler than Anthony Smith. He has better defensive striking than Anthony Smith in totality. Like, he's better at guarding, he's better moving away, but in all, he actually is more defensive minded, and that can actually prove to be more dangerous against Pereira with the fact of what Adesanya just did to him. If Pereira gets too reckless, he looks for the knockout against Rakic, he could also find himself to get caught in the mix there. But Rakic doesn't do that too much. He doesn't wait back to look for the counter shot. Oftentimes, he goes back to clinch up with you. And we saw what happened to Adesanya when he tried to do that against Pereira in their first MMA fight. Did not go well for Adesanya. Pereira was catching him over the shoulders. He was connecting with his punches while Adesanya was reaching. And that's what Rakic does often too. So that's a bit of an issue with Rakic when it comes to the stand-up. He does have really good leg kicks, but Pereira's a master of leg kicks. And the boxing difference is so massive between them two. But Rakic is great with the trips. If he is able to clinch up with Pereira, those trips are going to be coming out, and Rakic is a big, strong guy. I think he's the only guy in the top 5 who's potentially bigger than Pereira, so that could be an issue. If Pereira keeps his distance enough, if he's mindful of where he has to be to throw strikes and not get clinched up because he also has the reach advantage, I think he should be able to beat Rakic, but I'm actually going to ride with Rakic in this one. If he actually comes back 100% from that injury, which might not actually happen, it was a really bad injury, but if he comes back correct, I actually do favor Rakic to beat Pereira. Jan Blachowicz now. This can go very similar to the way that the Adesanya and Blachowicz fight went. Blachowicz is very defensive. He has a lot of power. He actually does look for the counter shot on the back foot. So Pereira definitely has to mind his P's and Q's on the offensive there. He has to know that Jan has that left hook at all times. So it is the left hook versus left hook of each other. Pereira definitely throws it better. Jan throws it in tight more. He'll throw it from the clinch. He'll throw it from any position given to him. But Pereira's is so much faster, it's so much more dynamic, and potentially even more powerful when he comes up to 205. We've seen his power in kickboxing at 205, and it's even scarier. Jan can slow down by the time they fight each other. He is very old, but if the age does not hit Blachowicz, I see him beating Pereira. I see him taking it to the ground. I see him controlling Pereira and getting that submission win somewhere in the middle rounds there. I think Pereira would beat him in the stand-up, but I just don't see Pereira lasting 5 rounds like as a defensive striker like Blachowicz, who's not going to expose himself for 5 rounds without getting taken to the ground. So eventually, when he does get taken to the ground, I can see Blachowicz winning off of that. I would actually be very impressed, though, if Pereira can survive that round or even stand up from someone like Blachowicz. That'd be crazy. Magomed Ankalaev, I have to go with Ankalaev. He's the best wrestler of the bunch. He's also a defensive striker who will sometimes get impatient, just like he did against Blachowicz, and expose himself, and he could get knocked out in those moments. Blachowicz did not take those opportunities, but Pereira would. If Magomed ever gets impatient and swings some big overhand like he did in his last fight, he's going to get KO'd by Pereira. But I don't see Pereira defending the takedowns at all. So I give Ankalaev a major advantage in that fight. Jiri Prochazka. This, I think, is more of a 50-50. In fact, actually, I would favor Pereira on this. You get reckless against someone like Pereira, you're going to get KO'd. And Jiri is the most unpredictable, aggressive striker who really does not go for takedowns. I mean, he has good scrambles. He's able to do that. He will shoot sometimes, but judging from the way he even shoots double legs and stuff like that, the drive is potentially not even there to get Pereira to the ground. And if he does, Pereira would be in some trouble, but Prochazka doesn't have the best top control. He scrambles a lot, and he catches you in those scrambles. But the ability to hold a guy to the ground, Prochazka is a bit weak there. So I can see some like messy scrambling exchanges where Pereira is able to get back up rather than trying to get something on top of Prochazka, because that's an issue that Glover had against Prochazka. He went for some really risky moves, and it caused these scrambles, but instead of trying to get up to his feet, he was trying to get the better of the positions. That's completely different than Pereira, who would try to stand up rather than engaging in the scramble, you know? He would try to avoid the scrambles. And I think because Prochazka doesn't have the best control, it will allow Pereira to stand up and it causes it to be more of a striking match again. And what Jiri presents on the feet, it's dangerous, but I don't think it's going to mess with Pereira at all. I think Pereira would knock him out. And then Jamahal Hill. This is more of an interesting one. Jamahal Hill doesn't shoot takedowns. In fact, he's shot in 0 takedowns in his UFC career, so you can expect a striking match. He could show some of it here for the first time, but we saw what happened with Adesanya, right? Adesanya did get Pereira to the ground once, but it was off of the fact that Pereira messed up. It wasn't like Adesanya did something that initiated it. It was Pereira that initiated when he shouldn't have, and then got taken to the ground. So I don't really see Jamahal Hill going that route. I see him trying to strike with Pereira just like he said he would, and I don't see Jamahal Hill beating him there. So I actually do think Pereira would beat Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill actually has good striking, but he's so basic. Everything he does, Pereira has seen a million times against guys way better than Jamahal Hill. So I'll go with Pereira there as well. So as you can see, man, styles make fights. Blachowicz, Rakic, and Ankalaev are dangerous for Pereira, and actually those are the more likely matchups for him when he goes up to 205, because Jiri's probably going to fight Jamahal Hill. So that takes both those two out. He could fight Anthony Smith, which is a better fight for him than the other guys. He absolutely does not want to fight Ankalaev. Blachowicz and Rakic are doable. They're not as bad as Ankalaev, but they're still favored to win the fight. So that's the end of the video, guys. Leave your comments below. What do you guys think? Who do you guys want to see Pereira fight? And what do you give him the chance against the top 5 there? Just as a reminder, it's Anthony Smith, Aleksandar Rakic, Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev, Jiri Prochazka, and the champion is Jamahal Hill.